I call this meeting to order. What's that? Turn the video on. Yes, turn the video on. We're recording. Okay. All right, I'm calling this meeting to order. This is the Design Review Committee meeting for the project called Estacada Lake Apartments. The official Design Review Committee members we have in the room are Mayor Sean Drinkwine, DEC and downtown business owner Hannah Smith, and downtown business owner Julie Cooper. We have a council and DEC liaison also joining for the sake of discussion and participation, but the official vote will be our three officially appointed committee members. I will clear some things up right off the bat here. So this project is not an affordable housing project. It's not transitional housing. Someone was, I suppose, spreading some false rumors on Facebook. That's probably how a lot of you found out about this project. Yeah, just regular market rate apartments. This is completely unrelated to the project that the county was interested in doing a couple of years back that was going to be like a transitional shelter type thing, totally unrelated. This is just a private property owner interested in developing their property according to what the zoning allows there. What else? Yes, apartments are allowed outright in the underlying zone. That means that the city is not allowed to block the apartments from coming in if they meet the development code. So that's part of what we're doing right now is we are reviewing their preliminary plans to make sure that it meets the development code. The design review for downtown projects can be done entirely by staff alone. We don't have to appoint any committee at all. So we could have just quietly done the review ourselves, not appointed a committee, not posted it publicly, probably would have saved some headaches. But the point of convening the design review committee is to make sure that we staff don't miss something. So the development code is complicated. The project here that we're reviewing today is complicated. We want to make sure that we're catching everything. So that's why we put the committee together. I think that's all that I'll say to get started. I hope that clears some things up for some of you. Okay, so in your packets, you have your agenda, which tells you that we're going to start with the staff presentation. Following the agenda, you have the submitted application, including the narrative from the applicants. And then after that, you have the staff memo or staff report, which is a landscape-oriented document. So you'll want to pull that out, and I'm also going to pull it up on the screen just so that everyone can see. But this is the document that we're gonna walk through together. And basically what we're going to do is we go through each of the code criteria that applies to this kind of project. And we evaluate what it is they're proposing to do and decide, do they meet the code or not? And if it's not clear whether they meet the code, then we either need more information from them or they need to change something about their plans to meet the code. So I'm going to screen share here so that everyone can see this staff memo, which, by the way, for folks online, all of these documents are linked, are uploaded on the meeting page for this meeting. So you can view it yourselves there. That's not what I want. This is what I want. We're gonna full screen. Does Adobe give me a way to even more full screen this? Full screen, yep, okay. Sweet, and then this is in the way. Alrighty. Okay, so hopefully everyone can see that sufficiently. So I just wanted to note at the top here, I noted the parties who were copied on the information about this project, who were copied about this meeting. So we have the Estacada City Council received this packet, the Estacada Planning Commission and the Downtown Estacada Commission. The reason that I basically overshared this is because, as you'll see, there are a couple of things about this project where it's not clear whether they meet the code. And then there were a couple questions as to whether the code itself is applicable or appropriate to apply. And so if one of the outcomes of this design review ends up being that we're going to recommend that the council change the code, which is a months-long process, but it might be an outcome. I just wanted that to be, everyone to be informed of how that potential code amendment came about. And then, of course, we copied the applicants who are here in the room and maybe online as well. So, as I described, this design review process is staff walking you through our review of how the project meets or might not meet the code, and then you all, the committee, will make that determination for yourself. You can agree or disagree with staff's evaluation. Ultimately, the city is required to permit this development if they do meet the code. So as soon as we determine that they've met the code, then they can go ahead and apply for building permits, and they just go through the standard building permit process at that time. Yeah, is that showing up? Thank you. Okay, so this is a proposed 100-unit apartment project at a 9-property site, which is currently the location of the Red Fox Hotel. And the only 2 properties that have addresses at that site are 600 Southwest Beach and 138 Southeast Larch Road, but I'll show you in a moment exactly where that is. Today we will, once we get through the staff presentation, we will have an opportunity to hear from the applicants, any comments that they have, and then any questions that you all want to ask the applicants. That would be the time to do that. And after that, we did leave a space for public comments. I just want to remind the public that it's really important, if you want your comments to be impactful on the outcome of this decision, they need to address the code criteria that apply to it. So the city is, once again, not allowed to block this type of development if they meet the code. So what's most helpful for us is you all can help us find places where they don't meet the code. We want help doing that review. It's a complicated review. It helps to have extra eyes on this type of project. That's why we convene the committee. So here is the site that we're looking at. Like I said, 9 tax lots comprising the site. It's at the southern end of our urban growth boundary, just to the south of us, basically here. So there's the site outlined in red. And here is the site plan. You all have this in your packet. It'll be the first of the 11 by 17 large pages. So that's probably easier for you to see than what's on the screen. But on the site plan, what you can see is that they are proposing 8 different buildings and kind of a sort of looping around a parking lot that would, there would be throughput through the parking lot. And 108 parking spaces for the total 100 apartment units. The next page in your packet after the site plan is where the building elevations pages start. So elevations just means it's the view of the building from the side, like what it would look like if you were standing next to the building. So I only clipped one example of the elevation into the staff report, but because they're large and there are 5 distinct building types, so there are a number of pages here. So you'll want to reference the actual building design, building elevations document in the packet. So here's a sample though of one of the building elevations. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and start making my way through the code. I'm sorry, it's not more fun or interesting. So how we're going to do this, you've got the development code on the left in gray, and then our staff evaluation of that code on the right in black. So the first criteria that we have to review is not really applicable. They're not proposing any land division, and even if they were, there's no minimum required lot size in that zone, so we don't need to look at that criteria. Next one is parking requirements. At that site, they are entitled to a reduction, a total of a 30% reduction in required off-street parking spaces. So even though they are entitled to that, they're not asking for it. They're actually proposing to put in 8 more parking spaces than the minimum requirement. The minimum requirement that we have for off-street parking for multifamily development is 1 space per unit. So 100 units, that means they need 100 parking spaces, and they're proposing 108. So that requirement is met. The next one is a setback requirement. In the downtown zone, we actually have a maximum setback requirement. I guess the intention of that is to facilitate like the pedestrian oriented vibe that you get when the buildings are, pushed right up to the sidewalk. That's kind of the downtown Main Street intention of that setback requirement. So we actually have a maximum setback of 5 feet. So this means that structures must be built up to, right up to 5 feet of the property line or closer. It's a little tricky with this project since the applicant is proposing to span the entire site, which is technically comprised of 9 parcels. For the purpose of the development, we need to consider just the boundary of the total site to be the property line that the setbacks apply to. So looking at their site plan, we can see that building numbers 6, 7, and 8, which they're labeled if you look closely. 6 is the one all the way to the left. 7 and 8 are the smaller ones on the north side fronting Larch Road. So those ones show, if you had this on a screen, you could zoom in and see that there's a really tiny little 5-foot label on the setbacks there. So those ones do show that they're within 5 feet of the property lines, but none of the other ones are at least labeled. showing that they meet that setback. Building number 5, this is just kind of my commentary, could be moved southward to achieve that 5-foot setback. And building number 4 kind of looks like it might meet the setback, but it wasn't labeled, so we're not positive. And then buildings 1 through 3, in order to meet this criteria, could just be relocated to be set back from the northern or eastern property side of the property line, or reorient the parking area to, I don't know, it's up to the developer to basically get creative and make that work. But as it is now, that criteria does not appear to be met. And then I had a note in here, this committee it's ultimately up to the developer to figure out how to meet the code criteria, but you all are welcome to suggest specific changes to the site plan or the building plans if anything comes to mind during this meeting. Sidewalks, this is just a standard requirement. They're going to have to do standard frontage improvements. So they will put in sidewalks built to city standard, 5-foot sidewalk with a curb. And then if there is any need for pavement, I don't remember what the streets look like there, but they'll need to make sure that from the center line of the street to their property line, they'll have to improve that frontage to city standards. So you'll get at least half of a fully improved street. This next criteria does not apply, so I'll skip it. Building height, they're not proposing any buildings shorter than 17 feet or higher than 65 feet, so this criteria is met. Landscaping, basically they need to landscape at least 5% of the site. And they did submit a landscaping plan, which is included in the last 2 pages of your 11 by 17 packet sheets. They included a landscaping plan and it appears to meet this criteria. Access and circulation. So they're proposing, so looking back at the site plan again, we see they're proposing 2 accesses for this development. I'll note that there are actually, with their proposal, there would actually be 3 accesses total to the site because you have the existing Red Fox motel access, which comes off of Beach Road. That's the northern access on Beach Road. And then they would propose an access point from Larch Road on the north side of the site, and then another new access on the south of the site, also onto Beach Road, kind of lining up with Southwest Lakeshore Drive. Technically, the city could require them to consolidate these accesses if we had concerns about that. I don't recommend either way. I don't really think it's necessary to consolidate them, but if the committee has concerns about that, that is something that you could require, consolidating accesses. Clackamas Riverside requirements. So these are specific requirements in the downtown zone for properties fronting Clackamas River, adjacent to the Riverside Path, the city's Riverside Path. And so the first requirement here is for the city to coordinate with our other permitting agencies. The second 2 requirements are for the applicant. And so number 2 here is development shall provide public access to the Riverside Path. The city decision-making authority may require the provision of a public access easement, blah, 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 and a minimum 6-foot wide paved surface connecting the subject development and any adjacent sidewalk to the Riverside Path. So that's the first one here that we need to look at. Did they provide a public access to the Riverside Path? And do we want to make sure to ensure that and protect that basically by requiring a public access easement and making sure that they show that paved path on these plans. My recommendation here is that yes, we should get that in an easement to ensure public access is preserved on that path. And I also just wanted to, I think the applicant will be able to speak to this, but I want to make sure that it's clear in the plans that where that publicly accessible path is. So if you look on the site plan or you're reading through their narrative, they note that an 8-foot wide scenic walkway has been provided along the southern portion of the development. So this is on the bottom left side of the site plan. There are 5-foot sidewalks that run through the site that connect it to the scenic walkway via a crosswalk. But I noted here in the memo that it's not clear from their submitted site plan or narrative whether that walkway and internal sidewalk network would provide a public access to the city's Riverside path, or would it just be for the use of the residents of that apartment complex. So the recommendation here is require that 10-foot public access easement, require that paved surface in that public access easement, and make sure that both the development and the adjacent public sidewalks are connected to the Riverside path with this project. That's the first, the first piece here. And then the second of these that apply to the applicant is an area equal to no less than 10% of the subject site should be reserved as a common open space between the development and the Riverside path. The open space should be landscaped to serve as a partially site obscuring screen between the development and the path, and to provide an area for surface water management. So this is another one that I asked the committee's assistance reviewing. I'm gonna pull up their landscaping plan. Zoom. Okay. Here we go. So there we go. Okay. So this part, the south western part of their development is the only area where they show you know, that kind of significant landscaped area. And so once again, it's not clear from their plans, it's not labeled to demonstrate whether or not that is the area that they're reserving for this kind of screened landscape screening / common area, but it looks like they could meet that requirement with this area. It just needs to be demonstrated in their plan. So we need to, you know, we need them to show the calculation of, yes, this meets the minimum. I think it was like 10% of the project area being reserved for that purpose. So my recommendation here is just that they, you know, update the plans to show that calculation for us and make it explicit on the plans that that's the common area that they're proposing to meet that code requirement. It appears that they can meet it though. Back to the staff report. Okay. Color choices were included in their submitted materials. They're proposing light and medium gray colors that that do fall into the pre-approved paint palette that the city adopted a couple years ago. And so as long as they are choosing colors that comply with that pre-approved palette, then they have met this code requirement. So they did indeed meet that requirement. Just noting here that there's a rule in this code section that the changes in colors, so if they're using different colors, which they are, they need to relate to the changes in building materials. So basically that just means you can't paint like a gradient just on a wall, right? You would have a different color for the trim, and then the main wall would be a different color, all one color, stuff like that. I don't anticipate any issues with that. Any signs are going to need a sign permit and need to comply with our sign code. That criterion will be reviewed at the time they apply for signs. Primary entrances shall face the street likely to have the greatest pedestrian traffic, but there's an exception for buildings adjacent to Clackamas River are exempted from this if the building itself is oriented to the river. So what that means, according to our code, this standard is met when proposed dwellings incorporate a river overlook and pedestrian connection to the river pathway. The pedestrian connection is going to be required anyway. And so what we need to see on the plans is a river overlook. Back to their site plan, they do show some benches in the southwestern, I'm all mixed up here, in the southwestern part of the development where they have the 8-foot scenic walkway. They show 3 benches there. And so once again, it's just a question of, is that the river overlook that they're proposing? Is it going to be open to the public and connected via the publicly accessible path? And if so, then that appears to satisfy that requirement, exempting this development from the primary entrance, code criteria. Okay, this is the big one, I guess. So we have a requirement in our code for transparent elements, which essentially means windows, need to, in the downtown zone, transparent elements need to make up at least 50% of the face of a building's ground floor, and that's the front, whatever is determined to be the front, facing the right of way. 50% of the face need to be transparent elements on the ground floor and 40% on the upper floors. There's a whole bunch of specifics about that from the code that I don't think we need to get into. The only adjustment to that is allowed in the code is this last item here. City planning staff may provide an adjustment to transparency requirements for parking garages without a variance. So they're not proposing a parking garage. So there's not a lot of flexibility there. And something we noticed reviewing this application is that the design review application form that we have, most of our forms include an attachment at the end of them that's like the applicable code section for whatever that type of form is about. And so our design review form includes the code section for the downtown zone, for the design review part of the downtown zone chapter. That form was, I guess, not updated whenever these most recent code amendments happened, which was 2017. That ordinance is now in the back of your packets. And so the form has outdated code that says buildings on Broadway, Main Street, 2nd Ave, 3rd Ave, 4th Ave, Acacia Ave, or Oregon 224 shall not contain less than 60% transparent windows, blah, blah, blah. City planning staff may grant up to a 15% adjustment to the window transparency standards without the need for a variance. And so that's for any building, not just parking garages. So this is the old code, but it applies only to very specific parts of the downtown zone. So it applies to Broadway, Main Street, Second, like these streets where, in my mind, it makes more sense to require this transparency element, which is that's a lot of facade to make into a window, especially for ground floor residential units. So when we noticed that discrepancy between the application form and the code, we worried that we thought, okay, well, the code that's on the form makes more sense to us because with a project like this, you would not expect ground floor apartments to have 50% windows on the ground floor wall. So we worried that the online code maybe just hadn't been updated. Maybe we made some mistake and maybe the code in the form was more recent. So we dug through the ordinance files and we found where, sure enough, back in 2017, I forget the ordinance number, I have it here, ordinance 2017-006. In your packets, you have a little blue like marker showing the page that shows that we repealed that old code that's on our design review application form and we updated it with the code that's currently online. So unfortunately, or however you look at it, that transparency rule requiring 50% of the ground floor to be transparent elements does apply to this project. So that's gonna be rough. They either will, in my mind, the options are they either update their plans to make it work, or they, do ground floor commercial, something different on the ground floor, or ask the city council to update the code to change that transparency requirement, which in my mind, I think a code amendment to that would be appropriate, but we would just have to go through the whole code amendment process, which takes a few months. So that's that section. In the staff report, it says that we were still investigating that, but we found the ordinance that we were looking for. So that's no longer under investigation. The online code is accurate. Okay, and then the last code section here is that a design review application shall be considered to meet the code if all of the above criteria are met. So everything we just went through are absolute requirements. And then the second step is to go through this rubric down here, and they need to receive at least 65% of the score in order to get approved also. So we just went through all of these code criteria. Some of them don't appear to be met, but we indicated some options that they might have to meet those code sections. And then now what we're going to have you all do with us is go through this rubric, which you have in your landscape oriented staff report. We're going to go through that rubric. And do you all have pens? We should have put out pens. Okay. And you will score them yourselves and discuss amongst yourselves if there's disagreement on any of the scores, to hopefully come to consensus on what the score is, and then we issue their score at the end. So I'm just going to navigate myself to that page. Okay. Maybe we'll pause for a moment and wait for Julie to come back. Yeah. Okay. Brief pause. Do I have a pen? Yes. While we're pausing, I'm gonna show the building elevations up on the screen if they will load. Because the building elevations are what you would want to be looking at when you're going through this review. Okay, so what we're doing now is in the landscape oriented document, pull up the rubric section. And this is what we kind of march through together and score them for each of the criteria. And then we'll add up the score and see if they got enough of the points. And so it's probably most helpful to be looking at the building elevations, the like side of the building view while you're going through this. Okay, so for the first criteria here, we have building location and orientation. All building entrances shall be recessed or covered by pedestrian shelters. So if you look at their plans, the entrances to the buildings are shown, I'll scroll to a more zoomed in one, are indeed shown to be recessed, and they've got shelters, they've got eaves overhanging, and stairwells that are recessed into the buildings. Sorry, my computer won't scroll faster. So I would find that criteria to be met. If everyone agrees, then you could choose the number 2. Primary building entrances should be at least 50% transparent so that two-way views in and out of a building are possible. This standard can be met by a door with a window, a transom window above the door, or side lights beside the door. They are not proposing for the front doors of the apartments to be transparent. They're proposing regular doors. So that would not be met. Once again, kind of an odd requirement to apply to this type of development. Do you all, it looks like we have the option to decide that that criteria is not applicable. How do you all feel about choosing NA for this one?
Well, if the code says that it has to be that, then we have to put a 0, right? Unless we change the code.
This section of the code is the scoring rubric doesn't establish strict requirements like all of the other sections we just went through before this. So they can get a 0 on some of these, or if it's appropriate to determine one of these as not applicable, then that's fine. So this section of the code is a little more flexible in that sense that you kind of use your discretion to say, oh, that doesn't make sense. We'll choose not to apply that criteria. So
do we know if there's other doors like for maintenance and stuff? Or are these buildings strictly just have apartments with their doors on them? I don't know.
it looked like just apartments doors, I guess the applicant, that might be a question for the applicant, if there would be any other doors.
Mhm.
It also says that side lights beside the door, and typically apartment buildings have lights beside or above the doors. So
Mhm. Yeah, so the question is whether to apply this criteria at all, and if so, would they get a 0 or a 1 or a 2?
I would feel that it would not apply because what the question is the doors, whether or not they would be solid doors or they would be clear doors. Is that correct? Okay.
Right. Mhm.
And these are for the doors going into their apartments.
Yeah, the complex is not, it's not like an apartment building that has one main public entrance
Mhm.
and then you get into your apartment internally. All of the doors are just directly, accessed directly from the outside.
I don't know how I would feel if my front door was, people could see right
A
into
window.
it, right?
But
I wouldn't like that. I got kids. I don't want, yeah.
well, based on the plans, it looks like, I meant, obviously, there are windows in the front. Looks like there are windows on the side. And right, is one of these plans of the back?
Yeah, so they do show
Okay,
all sides of all buildings.
so there is some transparency, but maybe not direct transparency.
these are gonna be like patios.
Gotcha. Okay, so those are, okay. Mhm.
Can we make a note on changing the code in the future? For something like this?
Yes.
Because I'm
yeah,
sure that there's gonna be more projects like this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, and I would love for the code to make more sense for my review purposes.
Mhm.
But yeah, so how do we feel about NA for this particular
I
one?
think NA.
So in this section, the points possible were only 2 points possible, and they received 2 points in that section. I think that's right. Okay, building openings, architectural detailing shall define building entrances. This is quite subjective. They have, as we said, the doors are recessed into the side of the building. That's about it. I don't know how you all feel.
Yeah, and each entrance is each apartment, right? So.
Right, there's
each
not one
apartment
main.
has to have, an entrance. There's no common.
I think it's pretty obvious
Yeah.
that the entrances are entrances, so.
If I just could say something real quick before you continue on, I, in all fairness, shouldn't even be sitting here. Because I am not in agreement with this development at all.
Mhm.
I don't think it's family friendly. I don't think it meets all the criteria that we need. I don't know how long the planning department has had it to look at. But I think it needs more time before we even get to this point. But in all fairness, I would say it would be better if I step down off of this board and the remaining people can decide the fate of this apartment complex, because I don't think I would have a fair statement for this process, because I'm not in agreement to it. So I think we're jumping the gun. I think we're not looking at all of it seriously. It's not, like I said, it's not family friendly. There's no family in this. You've got 36 units of studio apartments. You got 64 units of 1 bedroom. Where does that say family anywhere in that? It doesn't, even if it is affordable. I can't do it. So I'm going to step down. I'll sit right there in the front of the audience and you can determine where this goes. It'd only be fair.
Okay. Just following the code. I don't like it either. All right. How do we feel about this one? Does it get 1 point, 2 points?
I think it's all defined, so for the entrances, so I think 2.
2? Yeah. Okay, windows on buildings fronting Broadway, that doesn't apply. Wall-mounted lighting consistent with the architecture of the building shall illuminate primary building entrances and building-mounted signage. I did not see wall-mounted lighting. And let's see. So their elevations don't show wall-mounted lighting. But their submitted narrative might have addressed that. Lacking any shown on the plans, I think that would be either a 0 or a 1. You know, the stairwells are going to be lit. So
But it doesn't show on the plans on the stairwells that where the lights are.
right.
So I'd put a 0 down because they didn't mark anything.
Are there any, where is the lighting throughout the whole facility?
See if their narrative discusses. Here it is. Yeah. Okay, so not discussed in the narrative either. So yeah, they'll need to, in order to get that, they currently would get a 0 on that. You can assume they would have lighting provided, it just isn't shown here. So,
I'm gonna put a 0 for that.
okay. So in this section, possible points is 2, I'm sorry, 4. And received points is 2. Building line and rhythm. New buildings shall follow prominent horizontal lines on existing adjacent buildings, which we don't have adjacent buildings to this site. Unless you, I guess the Red Fox Motel would be the adjacent building. So you could either, you know, consider the line, you know, kind of lines that are shown on the building siding in the elevations. Decide whether or not you know, matching the Red Fox design seems important. Should this criteria apply at all, and if so, how many points would you give them? So just drawing your attention back to the elevations, they're showing the first couple of stories having horizontal siding, and then the top story of each building having vertical orientation.
So it is following the.
It does include prominent horizontal
Mhm.
lines.
Okay.
Yeah. 2 points.
Yeah, you
Okay.
have 2 points.
New building shall maintain clear visual division between ground floor and upper floors. On these plans, they show actually clear division between the top floor and the lower floors, but not between the ground floor and the upper floors. It's kind of opposite.
Isn't that white line? Isn't that division?
Yeah, there's a question for you all. Do you consider that there's like a thicker piece of the siding between the ground floor and between all of the floors? So up to the committee, does that satisfy a clear visual division between ground floor and upper floor? Okay.
Yeah.
So 2.
2.
New building shall incorporate rhythmic divisions relating to historic building patterns and proportions. For example, front elevations should be articulated. So defined by an offset, recess, projection, or similar break in the wall pane. No less than once every 25 feet.
Does it matter the material too? Not just the pattern, but
We
material?
are going to get to material.
Am I jumping the
yes.
gun? Okay, sorry. So. And it is offset, it does have recess. I don't understand what the break in the wall plane is.
A break in a wall pane.
Mhm.
So just it can just be any like object or, yeah, like a reset, the wall comes in or out from
Okay,
the standard
I think we discussed before.
facade.
It has those things.
Yeah.
So I give it a 2.
Is that agreed on giving 2 points? Okay. And new buildings shall reflect vertical orientation through volume, roof form, and or surface detail, such as vertically oriented sash windows, brick or stucco cladding and trim, or board and batten siding.
Do they say what material they're using?
They do. I can't remember if it's on the elevation or in their narrative.
I can read that off the narrative. This is Alan speaking.
Hi, Ellen.
Good. Hey. So in the narrative, they list that they're going to use shake siding, trim board, and lap siding.
Thank you.
Just a question, I'm not sure if this is irrelevant, but what is the, for that siding, what is the life of that siding? Does that make sense? Like how long will that?
That's a great
lifetime of
question.
those?
I don't know. Maybe another question for the applicant. So they've got pitched roofs, they've got pitched kind of I don't know if you would call it an eave, but they've got kind of dynamic roof proposed. They've also got those vertical oriented siding pieces. And yeah, how do you all feel about the points for this one?
I'm just more curious on more of the lifetime and the product and the quality of the material being used than I am the visual of it.
Yeah, if it's all the stuff that he listed off, it sounds like it meets the requirements, so.
Is it? I don't know.
Yeah.
What he said? Does it follow what Alan said?
It, I mean, it,
Partially.
so they're not proposing any of the specifically called out. I guess I don't know the difference between board and batten siding and the lap siding specifically, but it doesn't really matter because this criteria says such as, and then lists kind of examples. So it really leaves a lot of discretion for you all to decide.
Hannah, you had to go through the whole process of getting that that grant, and you have a list of of all the materials that would be able to like go through. That way we can be sure that it's
The historic preservation materials that Hannah was required for that grant would not apply to this. This is new construction.
oh, okay.
Okay. So right now, or right here, it says, basically, we're doing the points for the orientation, is what it sounds like. That has
Yeah.
nothing to do with the materials.
Yep.
All right.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, well then, yeah,
So,
I think it's
Because such as,
yeah.
so probably 2,
Mhm.
if they're doing vertical.
Okay, so it looks like 8 points possible in this section and 8 points received. Now we're getting to materials and color.
Oh.
Exterior cladding shall be consistent with historic building design. Materials may consist of brick veneer, stone, split face concrete block, clapboard siding, board and batten siding, or similar materials.
And
So the material, Alan, do you have that handy that you could read off the materials again?
Yeah, of course. Shake siding, trim board, and lap siding.
brick veneer, stones, board and bands. But does it have to be what's listed on here?
No,
No.
because it says or similar
Or
materials.
similar, are they so, I don't know, are they similar materials? Do we have a construction person here?
I think lap is similar looking to the clapboard siding, but the shake is not similar looking to clapboard or board and batten.
Can we ask them to send us pictures of what they want to use and
Yeah.
and do that?
Yeah, you can certainly ask. It seems like they're gonna
Are they
need to
here?
come back with, yeah, they're here and
Okay.
they'll have you'll hear from them in a moment.
Okay.
It seems like they're gonna need to come back with updated plans anyway, probably. So, that's a specific request we can include.
Can we put a 1 down because there's one thing that does look like it and then another thing that doesn't? Can we put a 1 down, or do you guys want to put 0 down? Because one of the things isn't what it's supposed to be.
Good question.
Yeah, I'd say 0
I would too.
for now.
Okay.
0, okay. All 4 sides. Oh,
I just have an off question too. Was there like a project like plan with all the public works about this building, saying like what it was, what it's gonna take to have this building happen?
not to my knowledge.
Are you talking about like the infrastructure, like
Yeah.
connecting to the sewers?
Uh-huh.
Oh, um, So we've only held a pre-application meeting, which was just, we convened the public works director, city engineer, I think the fire marshal, and planning staff and building reviewers. And at this stage, they just, all we really need to do is look at, do we have the sewer and water capacity to serve? At this time we do. And then they just need to follow the city's public works standards for hooking into the city system.
Okay.
So didn't get too detailed yet because they're not actually ready to submit building plans.
Okay. I mean, that way people knew before this meeting even happened, what type of apartments and stuff that was going in, because they said we're doing this, this, and this. And before they got to this step, then that was approved.
So the pre-application meeting, that meeting is for applicants that basically when before an applicant comes in with a big type of application, so like this project or land use applications, like a subdivision, things like that, they'll have a pre-app meeting, which basically helps them get a preliminary idea of what all is going to be required. And so sometimes applicants aren't really sure if they're going to move forward with the project. So they have a pre-app,
Yes.
figure out some more specifics on what might be required, and then they decide whether or not to move forward with it. So we've
Okay.
known about this potential project for a little while, but we never know if an applicant is actually going to move forward and submit an application. So from the pre-app stage, since it's in the downtown zone, they have to go through this downtown design review. Usually the next step for them would just be to submit building permit applications, and they can the zoning allows apartments outright. So someone can just come in and build the apartments as long as they meet the code.
Yes.
For this project, since it's in the downtown zone, they have to go through this extra review. So they are taking the next step with design review. But it's still, I guess we'll hear from the applicants, how certain they are to be moving forward or not. I know they've put a lot of time and work and money
For sure.
into it already, hiring the design professionals and stuff, but I think the real effort is at when they actually put together the building plans, because you've got engineers to hire for all of that and site work to do. So
okay. And I don't know anything. This is my very first meeting, and so I'm just asking questions that may not pertain to this or whatever. But was there anything, because back home in Westport, when a new fishery comes in, they usually have to be on the hook for like a new well, or on the sewers. Was there any talk about them providing any assistance for the sewer and water?
all new development contributes SDCs. So system development charges get applied to every single new building that comes in. And the methodology for those SDCs, the calculation is based on the square footage of the building, the type of units that are whether it's residential or commercial, how much impervious surface are they going to have that affects stormwater, how many, whatever the type and number of units determines the transportation SDCs to go towards our transportation system. The sewer SDCs go towards the build out and construction of our new wastewater treatment plant, as well as just the build out of the pipes in our system.
For sure.
So yes, they will be contributing their standard SDCs for that.
Okay. And then, okay, if I have any other questions, I'll speak up again.
Sure.
Sorry, guys. Sorry to prolong this stuff, but yeah, I just want to make sure I know what I'm signing up to. So the exterior, we're putting 0. Is that what it is?
I think we said 0. Yeah. The next one, all 4 sides of the building shall contain complementary exteriors. What does that mean? Don't know. What do you,
Well,
I wish I had a
Don't know what it
recommendation for
is.
you.
Can we put a zero
I
down?
don't love this code.
Yeah.
I think the more appropriate thing to do, putting a zero, will make the possible points higher and then it punishes them, but
Mhm.
I don't think that this criteria is, I don't think we can in good faith apply it. It doesn't, I don't know what it means. It's so subjective.
Mhm.
Does complementary mean that they complement each other by being, similar enough? Does it mean they complement like complementary colors that are different in a certain way that I don't, it
Mhm.
could be interpreted in so many different ways. So I personally would put NA because I just don't think that that's a helpful criteria to apply. I don't really think it's fair to apply it.
What do you guys think?
NA.
NA?
And this is based from our code.
This is in our code. Yeah.
Mhm.
This is one of many sections of our code that
Okay.
give me
So-
big headache,
okay,
big
so
headaches.
So why has this code not been addressed?
Why hasn't it been updated?
Yeah, is it just when things like this arise, when they get fixed, when they get noticed, or?
Basically, yeah, it comes up when we get a certain type of application and a certain section of the code applies to that application, and we go through and do our staff review and we run into, oh, wow, this code really doesn't make sense to apply. That seems like a problem. We, depending on the severity of the problem and the legal risk associated for the city of the problem, it might be an urgent need that we bring it to council and we have to have them initiate a code amendment, which for development code amendments is an arduous, long process. It would probably take 5 months or something, because we have to go through this state required process to update the development code. So a lot of times if we run into a code issue that's not an urgent need, we have a ton of issues in our code. We have a long running list. So we'll just add it to our list. And what we did at the start of this year with the council's goal setting, we provided that list to them so that they're aware of these code issues that we've had kind of on our radar. And we recommended prioritizing some of them that were a little more urgent or just that we thought aligned more with the goals or the priorities that they had already identified for themselves for that year. But what we'll do again at the beginning of next year is we will update that running list of code issues, put it in front of them again, and highlight the ones that seem either most important to tackle or easiest to tackle. If it's something that we can do fairly simply, then sometimes we'll prioritize those. Yeah, there are so many problems with our code that it's hard to, and it's such a process to update it that it's really hard to address these issues when they come up, So. Next one, pitched roofs. So they do have pitched roofs. Shall be wood, slate, cement tile, asphalt shingles, flat metal, or standing rib seam sheet metal. I don't remember if they told us what the roof.
Yeah, I can chime in again. They said that they're going to use composite roofing, which is not included in that list.
Now this is a shall be and not include. Then, so.
Yeah, the criterion is stricter here. It is a shall be.
Okay. So I put a 0 then.
Okay. And then, excuse me, buildings fronting Broadway Street is the next one. So that does not apply to this one. So NA. So in this section, we had a total of 4 possible and they received 0 in that section. We might want to come back to this one when we get to the end of the scoring and just remember that we were a little bit uncertain about giving them a 0 on the first one, the exterior cladding shall be consistent, etc. we'll get to that in a second, but just noting, we might want to come back to that one. Pedestrian shelters and public space. Buildings fronting Broadway Street, okay, that one does not apply, so NA. The next one, at least 3% and no less than 300 square feet of each new development site shall be designated and improved as ADA accessible civic space. So this is another thing that wasn't shown on their plans. It looks like they would have room to do so. Maybe the, the 8-foot scenic pathway with the benches, there are opportunities for them certainly to create this ADA accessible civic space. It just needs to get labeled and described in their plans, which I didn't see in their plans.
Just my experience working for the city of Westport, I think that if it's not on the plans, then we can't sign off because projects, if they're not held to something, then they definitely do something different, including water lines and everything else. So I would put a 0 for this.
Right. Okay. Does that, everyone agrees? Okay. Next one is street frontages shall be improved with pedestrian amenities equal to or greater than 0.5% of the estimated construction cost of the proposed buildings. So pedestrian amenities would include benches. I think we've allowed like bike parking to count as pedestrian amenities for past projects. Yeah, so like public seating. I think we've also considered like the concrete planters that can also sort of serve as a bench. Could be considered a pedestrian amenity. They could get creative with it and propose some things. But it would be the street frontages, right? So what they're proposing right now is those benches that are not along the street frontage.
The 3 benches there.
Yeah.
Do we know that it's greater than 0.5%? What's the?
And that's, yeah, so they would have to share the estimated total cost of the project, which I expect is quite high. It's a huge project. So.
And it's a super beautiful area down there.
Right.
So I think we should really hold them accountable for that.
Right.
And who would be responsible in maintaining that area?
Good question. So my understanding is that even if the normal frontage improvements are just like sidewalks, curb. Sometimes there's a planter strip in between the sidewalk and the curb. And even though all of those improvements happen in the city's right of way, it's generally the property owner's responsibility to maintain that area. And so I would expect that to be the same if they were providing, pedestrian amenities in the public right of way or along the public, certainly if it's along the public right of way, but still on their property, then definitely it would be their responsibility. But if it was in the public right of way, then I would assume it would be treated like we treat sidewalks, where it is the adjacent property owner's responsibility to maintain.
For sure. So if we don't have that number, do we do NA or do we do 0 because they didn't provide it? What do you guys think?
I think it's a 0.
0? Okay.
Okay, so points possible in there is 4 and 0 received. Okay, so now we go through and total these up. 3 sheets here. So in the first category, we had 2. Next category, we had 2. Next category, we had 8. Then 0 and then 0. So 12 total received. Sorry, I went out of order here. And then the total possible was 2 plus 4 is 6 plus 8 is 14 plus 4 is 18 plus 4 is 22. So 12 out of 22. Need some quick math here. What's that percentage?
$54.
54% if you stick to those scorings. The next question here is why I said maybe we would come back to this one about the exterior cladding. Is a minimum of 1 point in each category received. So in the materials and color category, if we wanted to be a little flexible or generous on that first one, they could have gotten 1 point in that category for the first one.
So I Google searched the lap siding compared to clapboard siding, and it is a very similar product. It's just shaped a little different.
Okay.
But the clapboard siding is a little bit more concave, where the lap siding is a little bit more convex, but it's very similar. So it's up to you guys. Like I said, I'm not part of the decision making.
Okay, so I guess my question is that all just aesthetic for design, or is there a purpose? Because remember, we live in Oregon and there's a lot of rain and weather, and so the integrity of that siding. And I'm an artist, I'm all about the visual part of it, but I think this is really about the durability, the integrity of the structure and the outside and the beautification, not only once it's built and the months after it's done, but years down the road.
Yeah. Yeah, so we need a determination on, is that, does that difference in material feel small enough to consider it similar, or does it feel like too much of a difference?
I think.
I want it to be
very.
very specific. I'd like to know, not just generic. I want something very specific.
Mhm.
I think it should go with the code.
Yeah, so if they came back with updated plans showing one of these specifically called out citing options, that would satisfy this committee.
Mhm.
Sounds like, okay. Okay. So you're leaving that one a 0.
Yes.
Okay, and then the other section, even if that had been a 1, the other section that they got 0 on was the next one. The first item in that section was not applicable. And then there was the ADA civic space that's not shown, but like I said, certainly could be. So that's something that's doable. And then those pedestrian amenity frontage improvements, which would be significant because of the scale of this project. So lacking those, they don't receive a minimum of 1 point in each category. So that's a no. And then we went through our review of the standards in 16.26.050 subsection B 8 through 9, or not 8 through 9, just everything in the code above. And some of those criteria, like the transparent elements, were found not to be met, or at least some other ones were maybe could be met, but they hadn't demonstrated it on the plans.
Mhm.
So that one is also a no.
What percentage was it again? I'm sorry.
54%. So back to the upper part of the staff report. The very last code requirement right before we got into the scoring rubric was a design review application shall be considered compatible if all of these code sections are met, and if a minimum of 65% of the total possible points in the rubric are accumulated, and if 1 point in each category on the table is received. So as it is now, and we've yet to hear from the applicant, maybe they can clear some of these things up, might change some scores. As it is now, it appears they've not met any of those 3 requirements of that last code section in the report.
Roger.
So let's look back at the agenda. If you're all comfortable moving along on the agenda, then the next thing would be hearing any comments from the applicant, and you could ask them some questions too. Then public comments, and then the committee would discuss and vote on their approval with conditions or denial.
Awesome.
Do you guys want to take a break before we? Yeah.
5-minute
Let's
break.
give it 5 minutes.
Sure.
Great.
Everybody use the restroom.
Okay, I'm calling this meeting back to order or
Resuming.
something like that. Resuming the meeting. Thank you. We are now at the next agenda item, which is the applicant has an opportunity to say any comments or additional description or answer any questions from the design review committee. So if anyone from the applicant's team wants to come up to the mic.
I have to tell you, I'm a little bit hesitant to say anything because I can tell there's a lot of disagreement with this project. And Mayor Drinkwine, I appreciate your opinion and all that, but it's powerful coming from the mayor, what you said. And so I'm just very brief. I'm not going to address, there are people better than myself who can talk to specific things like the materials or whatever. And certainly multi-tech and the people, the architects are online. They can talk to those things far better than I can. But I will say that as far as, and Estacada is awesome. And I see this huge growth that you have in the multifamily up by the library and the skate park and the beautiful job you guys are doing with all of that. Very family oriented up there. But down here, what this was designed and we thought was what was best for the place was for seniors. It's near the senior community center and for workforce housing, people who have no place to live here because they can't afford a house and there are no apartments. And that was what, after a lot of thought, we determined was the best use. And that's what we ended up going for. So that's really all I have to say. I don't disagree with what Mayor Drinkwine said about families, but that's what this was. And it is down by the senior community center. It's walking so that these people can get to the downtown area. And there was thought. It wasn't just a knee-jerk reaction to do this. So I'm going to let other people speak, as I said, to the other things, but I did want to get that in there. So thank you.
I have a question real quick. Is there a percentage of apartments for seniors? Like an age, is there a complex that is just for the seniors? Was that laid out?
No, but
No.
the percentage of studios, and again, it's workforce people too, and 1-bedrooms, it's designed that it would be great for seniors and for people who are retiring and, like I said, near the senior community center, and to be able to walk along the river and enjoy that. So
No, I think that's incredible. Seniors have a fixed income, right? And to be able to have something like that is great, but I want to make sure that if it is for seniors, that there's requirements for a certain percentage of those places for the seniors, if that's what you're saying.
yeah, you know what? I'll let someone else address that. And it's certainly something we could take into consideration, but I just wanted to give you an idea of what the philosophy of why we did that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh, Susan Hamilton, and I'm part of the development team. But what do you say? Well, he's, yeah.
Uh-oh.
Is that good? Okay. This is my husband, Zan Hamilton, and Jeff Schindler. They're the two main developers. And so, you get a team with Zan and me. So, okay. Yeah.
So, I'm Zan. I just got introduced to Carrie and, he said, something I think it really resonates. He said, so this is the first I've ever heard it. And he said, this is like,
I think we might have to have you move over to another mic. Sorry, public mic is now that first table.
Have a seat.
do I get it?
I think so.
No.
Does this work?
Yeah.
So, so Kerry came up, introduced himself to me, nice man. And he said, so just so you know, this feels like we knew nothing about this. And this is like brand news to us. And it's just like getting, opening up a Christmas present and getting something durable. And somebody says, what color do you want it? I cleaned it up. So we've been working on this for over a year. I mean, we have engaged engineering reports for not only all the services, the electrical, the plumbing, and we've done surveys down there, which is interesting because there's no survey on record until we did it. We did lot line adjustments. We've done, we went to the county to get a replat. We've done all this stuff. So it's not like we've been here a lot. And we've instituted economic reports. We've had economic report revisions from Johnson Economic, who is a Clackamas County economist, to see that there was a need for housing and what housing needed the most. So we went from studios to 1 bedrooms to 2 bedrooms to 3 bedrooms. We have data showing what's needed. So it wasn't like as happenstance, we're not going to make this for families. There was no housing for kids leaving home in Estacada unless they wanted to buy a house or live in somebody else's house. And there was no place for somebody who sold their business, sold their farm to move to. And they were staying at the Red Fox in 300-foot rooms. And so they're going to be getting in a studio for the same they were getting a 1-bedroom hotel room. So we thought that was good. The mistake we assumed, which is terrible things to do, you shouldn't assume anything. We assumed that this wasn't a surprise. So, so here we are. And the last thing we want is to be a pariah in the community. The whole point is we want to be part of the community. We want to upgrade the hotel and make more places for people to stay in the city. We want to have more housing in the city so people can make a more vibrant downtown. And all those things get accomplished by this. So I'm happy to work with anybody who, I mean, we need to. And I don't want to be adversarial because that's not our intention. And I think we've dealt with staff enough that they know that, and I'm sure they'd validate that. So I apologize to Carrie and the rest who were shocked by this. That's not our intent. I think we're very reasonable people who want to work with this community because we want to be a part of it. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you very much.
I'll just note that there would not have been there wouldn't have been any public information that the city would have been able to put out about this until we receive an application. So they did, we were aware because we had a pre-application meeting, which is not, they submit a pre-app request, which is basically they come to us to find out what all is going to be required probably for their project. And then sometimes, half the time people find out what's required and then they don't end up moving forward with their project. So at the time of pre-app, the city wouldn't put out any information about what might go in there. At the time of actual application submittal, that's when we can start putting out information. Part of the reason that we made this meeting public was to, make sure that this really big development, the review of this really big development had some community oversight assistance, going through our difficult code. So that's why, there's always, with any big development project, there's always going to be, the first time people hear about it, it's going to be surprising, and growth is really hard, and understandably so. Yeah, that's just how it had to go. Okay. Yep.
Hi, my name is Rich Buchko. I'm project manager with the Hamilton family here, and I just wanted to make a really quick comment about the materials that we're being asked about. We'll follow up, or I believe our architect is probably still on the phone. They are, I see them. On the siding, what they've got identified there is hardy plank, LP siding, and batten and board, which is it's a common, it's widely used now. These are the types of products that came out of the aftermath of the LP siding disaster, that's gone on for many years. So I think our architect, I know our architect will be able to demonstrate that the hardy plank materials are durable and meant for a lifetime for that specific reason. And then also on the roofing, the criteria mentions, I believe it's one or the other, but I believe the criteria mentions asphaltic type roofing materials.
Asphalt shingles.
Asphalt shingles, yeah, that's what we're using. It's composition roofing, which is those are the same thing. And again, we can provide a submittal or whatever you would need to demonstrate that it meets that criteria. That's all I have.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
So just thinking back to our rubric, board and batten siding is one of those explicitly listed exterior materials. So that would, I think, bump them up to 2 points on that one. And then asphalt shingles. So they would end up having 4 out of 4 points in that category instead of 0 out of 4. Are there any other comments from the applicants or questions for the applicants?
Yeah, I think I just really want to press that if it's really going to be one bedroom places, that we can see a designated percentage for seniors and a designated percentage of workers and kids graduating that can afford that, because I think one of our biggest concerns is people that are not contributing to the workforce are going to be in the homes. I think that's what the rumor is that I've seen on Facebook and everything. And I think that if we can designate seniors and workers, but it's completely up to it's a private company, so you guys can do whatever you want to do for sure. But I think that in good faith, it would be good to see something from the develop people to give us those numbers, and then we would feel a lot better. I think the community would feel a lot better about it too. You guys are saying that you want to be a part of this community. Well, let's see that good faith and see those designated numbers for those people. So
yeah, we have a hand raised from a Jonathan. Is Jonathan part of the applicants? No. Okay.
And just before we bring him in, just want to note that
The architects are raising their hand.
you are certainly welcome to ask for that from the applicants. As you said, it would be their decision. They're,
sure.
Private entity. And I would just note that the city can't legally require them to
100%.
restrict, the type of occupants for residential units, but
Yes.
you can certainly ask for it. And that's a perfect example of kind of the optional negotiation that they could make with the community now that this is kind of becoming a public conversation.
For sure.
The architects, you should be able to talk now.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate that. My name is Mark and I'm the lead engineer. And in our room here is our land use planner, our architectural consultant and project manager. So this is our staff that you see here. We appreciate the comments there. And I think some of this is just in the confusion about how you denote like materials, for instance, the different ways you can call out materials. And Rich pointed out to you that when we say hardy board with bats, that's board and bat. That's what that is. And composition shingles is our asphalt shingles. They're made with asphalt and composite materials. That's what that is. I'm sure that's what your standards are referencing for that type of stuff. And then horizontal lap siding. If we look in the definition of clap siding, horizontal, one of the terms used is horizontal siding. So if we need to designate it different, we can certainly do that so that it's clear that that's what you're looking for. So I know that you may have some questions for us, and I'm not sure if it's appropriate if we ask some questions so that we can might help us in providing you better information on the site. We're not really sure that we understand how some of the different criteria that you laid out there, how they would play out to each other. And they appear to be somewhat overlapping on each other and may not be, it might not be possible to achieve everything. And I'm not sure what process that you would like us to follow to identify those things, but there are, for instance, if you want the building set against the perimeter of the site, if you look at this site and you want 10% of the area adjacent to the river to be landscaped and set up to be usable, that doesn't appear to match each other, that it would be difficult to do that. But maybe we're just not understanding that part of what your development standards are trying to achieve there. So that it's just, there's a truck sewer line that runs down along the river, so it's going to be difficult for us to get buildings real close to the perimeter if that's what somebody's expecting. And I don't know how this plays out in addressing those things. So could be that we just don't understand your process, but certainly there might need to be some clarifications to help us understand. And we're glad to answer any questions that you might have of us too, that's helpful. So.
So we put a 0 down for street frontage shall be improved with pedestrian amenities equal to or greater than 0.5%, but you guys didn't put down a number. Do you have that number for us?
We certainly can generate that information. We don't have that right off the top of our head. We'd have to work with our clients in order to ascertain what those different values are, because they're depending on the types of material and the way you choose to do that would make a difference in that. And I think that what we would it was helpful in the discussion to understand that things like walkways and stuff around the perimeter would be part of what would be included in that, even though some of that's going to be in city right away. So we can provide that information. I think you're looking for other economic information such as that justifies the type of housings and the living units that we have here that you're looking for. So that can all be provided with that.
Yeah, I think we can get some of these checked off if we got if we revisit this and we get that, that information, like the pitch roofs shall be wood, slate, or something like that. I don't know if we got the answer on what that is.
Yeah, we got that they are indeed using asphalt shingles.
Okay, so then
that
that's
one would
two
now be
then.
met. Mhm.
So we have to,
And that they are using board and batten
That has to-
siding, so that first one would bump up to 2 as well.
okay. So that changes the score and changes the percentage.
It does. It changes the score to 16.
Okay.
It's 11 million.
Okay, we do have some numbers for you here, so
Mhm.
if we assume that this project is about an $11 million project. And then you're looking for that then half
Say
of
11 billion
11 million.
million, okay.
That billion.
Whoa, jeez.
Yeah,
There better be a gym.
no, we're not.
That's
we don't
federal
work at the
government
same
numbers right there.
as the federal government does, but but 11 million, then you'd be looking at 55,000 for our perimeter improvements, and we'd be likely able be exceeding that with the perimeter improvements that work with walkways and the stuff we're proposing to do down along the river. So we would exceed that, but we can get you that specifically. But yes, we would be in excess of half in that 0.5%.
Yeah, I'd love just see it in writing, that.
Sure.
We also gave you a 0 for wall mounted lighting consistent with architecture of the building shall illuminate primary building entrances and building mounted signage. Just because it wasn't in the plans, we couldn't give you any score for that because there's nothing designated in the plan.
Well, we have those. They just don't show up in our. They don't show up in the drawings and sheets that we said, but the architectural drawings that would come in for building permit would have all that information on. So that's, we didn't recognize that was information that needed to be provided at this level at this time. We certainly can delineate that and get that for you.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Okay, so I have several questions and I'm not sure who these questions would be directed to. So anyone, please speak up. And I just want to let everyone know that we're all a team. We're all accomplishing this as a team, and we don't have a lot of room for error because once it's in place, it's in place. So I'm all about doing it the right way the first time. So one question about the lighting. My question is there any street lighting on Beach and Larch Road? And what about lighting within the facility for safety?
There would be when the project comes in for building permit, then there we can add it to the drawings for you when we come back to you, but there are pole lightings, there is interior lighting that goes up within adjacent to the parking for post lighting and pole lighting so we have some 14-foot pole lights that go in different places, and we have some 5-foot post lightings that go adjacent to the walkway areas out in front of the buildings. And then of course there's lighting on the front of the buildings that illuminate the signs, and lighting that illuminates the walkways into the building entrances. So there are, we don't have the lighting showing that's around the perimeter on Beach or Larch, so I can't tell you that for sure. Generally, we tie this down when we go through there. I'm looking to see what they show up on a particular sheet. And they do show up, so there is some lighting that shows up on, and it would be SDR2 sheet. There's our existing conditions, and it does show that there's at least one light showing on Beach.
Not in your packet. The sheet he's talking about is not in your
Oh, it's not in there.
packet.
So would it be easier to have Mark just validate that and just say, hey, these are where the lighting elements are going to be. This is how much it's going to help. I mean, just to clarify, each unit will have lighting, the stairs will have lighting, the exterior will have lighting on all walkways, the parking will have lighting to illuminate all parking areas. Would that suffice?
Yes, because I just don't want to assume.
Well,
you
let's
know.
go back. And so if we say that and you go forward good faith, and then it's something that's lacking that, then do a clawback. Just say, hey, we will agree to, right? We will agree when you get the plan, we'll agree to that plan. And that should solve it for you, because if you don't agree, then that would be bad for us.
Mhm.
Does that work?
I see.
Oh, approved with conditions, yeah.
Mhm. Okay. Can I ask my other questions? Okay. I know that I had touched up on the concern of the materials and the lifetime of the products, and I know that we had talked about that. The other question I have is, and this may not pertain to what we're doing, but this is just more for my knowledge and maybe for the public's knowledge. So you have designated 100 units at studio and 1 bedroom. And I know that someone mentioned that you'd done a lot of research on that. My question is, why 100 units? It seems like it's a lot of units for an area. And why not offer 2 bedroom, 1 bath, and 1 bedroom, and smaller, or not smaller units, but less of the studio?
So, so you have, I believe, and help me with this, I think yours 36 units of 2 bedroom going up above.
Which was my next question. I was just in comparison to the one up above.
The one up above is 36 units. It's, I believe it's a subsidized project
Mhm.
for families. So our economic report, which you've been given,
Mhm.
shows that there is 200, up to 200 units in arrears in Estacada. So certainly 100, maybe up to 200 units. And so it seemed like it was fulfilling a need, and we can do it. And so why wouldn't we do it? So, and then the question came back, and we had interesting conversations about this at home around the dinner table about 2 bedroom and 1 bedroom and studio. And we came up with that there's more likely that there's a need for studio and 1 bedroom. And part of this is through Sam Dunlop's business in the Red Fox Motel. And he stays busy, he stays full most of the time. And he stays full through workforce from people working for the Forestry Service and through the PGE. But he also has people who've retired and they've moved into a motel room. And basically they're long-term residents, or I don't know, it's extended stay, I think they call it. And he turns away people. And so that to me that's not somebody coming up with some equation, that's real life. And so we figured hey, at least half of these studios are going to be extended stay type folks. And they're going to be the same price as they're paying for a hotel room. I mean, why wouldn't we do that? And then that's how we got the studio aspect. And then we came up with the 1 bedroom and the 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom argument. My wife is a huge proponent of the 2 bedroom argument.
How long is that?
This is only 80.
I think they're like 100.
Yeah, they're 105.
Does that answer your question?
It does. It does. So within this map, and usually most spaces like this will have an area for the tenants, like a community room, some sort of weightlifting room, some sort of, is there one included in this?
Yeah, and there was a debate on that. Actually, this process has been a debate. So the one was, do we need to have a weight room, or do we need to have a gym or something like this? And I'm going down, I don't know anybody who uses their gym, and our amenity is the Clackamas River and the walkway, which we, by the way, are making public. It's always been our intent to have it public so people could share it all the way down to the Casadero. And we talked about putting in gazebos, but we can't because it would be on a right of way. And if it's on the right of way, you have to get to the utilities. And then we thought, okay, well, let's put in bench tables and things like that. So that's what we're doing. We're putting in tables, picnic tables, which are open to the public. We're putting in signs along the river, monuments. I think Melanie sent us on one of her trips, showed a walkway along the waterfront where people were doing historical signs. We're planning on doing that for the public as well.
Okay. So there is no common area within this facility, or there is?
Well, I just wanted to.
You can use that first mic at that table too. Yeah, should be on.
As far as the weight room, again, also, we asked Sam, because we're unfamiliar. Apparently you have a very nice gym across the.
And let me just clarify, I'm not just saying specifically a weight room. I'm talking about a open space for families to come and meet and have like a birthday party or, you know, an area for a meeting or a gathering.
So it may not, I actually am not sure, it may not be in the plan yet, but we have agreed that we're going to put
We do have a community room.
but is it on the plan?
Yes, it's on the plan. Well, it's on, we have a unit designated for that. So
Yeah,
it'll be
okay.
an area with, you know, it'll have a communal kitchen, it'll have a TV, that kind of thing. So people can have, you know, birthday parties or gatherings or watch the Super Bowl or have meetings, that kind of thing. That has been included in the project plan.
Okay, and is it, and so it's not listed in this plan here?
I don't know if it's designated on that plan or not. I have to talk to our friends at Multitech, but that is definitely in the unit mix.
Okay. And so any other green space will only be the walkway along the riverfront, right? There's not going to be.
Primarily, yes.
Okay. And who will be maintaining that area?
I think Taylor mentioned that earlier, that, you know, we would be maintaining all of our landscaping team would be maintaining all of our property, and then we collaborate with the city on the maintenance of the path by the river.
Okay, so the beautification, the landscaping that's going in is it's all gonna be maintained throughout the whole year and.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. I just, like I said, I
No.
didn't
Fair
want to
question.
assume, but just want to ask.
Just for a fact, so Sam's been maintaining that for 40 years
Yes.
and it's not his property and has been
Yes.
doing that.
Yeah, so which my other question is, so what is happening with the Red Fox Motel? Is that being demolished? Is
No,
it being?
no.
So it's still gonna be
It's going to be a nicer, brighter, cleaner,
okay,
if
so,
it possibly could be.
We're doing a full rehab on that. It's going to be painted. We're doing new concrete on the pathway. We're doing new
Okay.
windows. We're doing quite a bit of.
so the
renovation.
motel is gonna, is gonna
Absolutely,
remain.
yeah.
So it's gonna be a motel and an apartment.
There'll be a new sign. It's going to look, yeah,
Okay.
it's
And,
definitely getting in.
and so there's two units in the, two separate standing units in the Red Fox Motel, right? A northern and one is like a
We call
southern
it the
unit?
motel and we call it the annex.
sort of
You're talking
it's
about the
not on
annex, which is on Riverfront.
there, right?
No,
Okay.
turn this into.
Oh, is he talking to us or?
No.
Go on. Okay, go ahead.
So the annex will be made into apartments. So the annex won't remain
Okay,
and it's being,
Wait.
and the storage will not remain,
will not, or
remain,
will remain?
will
The
not.
storage will not.
Will
remain.
not.
Storage is gone.
Okay.
And
12 units.
so the hotel will be a hotel or no?
A motel, yeah.
Motel will
Yeah.
be a motel.
And 12 of the units that are at the top of the property, the two smaller buildings will be used as extended stay. So they'll basically be operated along with the existing motel, and there'll be new units. So
Got it.
we'll have a total of 32, 33 units.
Yeah, so the way we're looking at it is the motel will stay as a motel and do that. And if we have overlap, we can accommodate folks in the extended stay in the 12 unit apartments.
The motel will be short stay.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yes.
Awesome. There's nowhere to stay in here. My family.
Well, you know what? There's a need for
Yeah.
rooms in
Mhm.
Estacada for motels.
Yes.
And so, and it's a beautiful property and it'd be a great place
Mhm.
to have it be nice. And so the reason I saw some eyebrows go up when I said we didn't think we were going to keep the storage. The reason why we didn't, it was a safety reason. We didn't want people living in apartments and then having strangers come to their property all hours of the night, rightly so, to get their storage. And it seemed like a safety and soundness issue to us. It's not that we have,
Essentially an industrial use that's not really compatible with multifamily.
It would make sense if the storage was for the residents.
yeah,
That would
and we
make
had that,
sense,
we
but-
had that conversation as well. And Multi-Tech has designed that for other facilities as well. But we thought it's more important to have overflow to the motel.
Mhm. And I know that there has been, some concerns about the area maybe not being so family oriented. And I don't know what can be done to make both sides of the parties, happy with that. But I mean, I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there. Is there any room to make, like a green space for like a little playground or a little, something other than just the walkway? And I might be asking for a lot, I know, but I'm just
No,
throwing it out.
if I were in your shoes, I'd be doing the same thing. So we actually, Pete, the architect, who's terrific, actually had play structures, and we went through all this stuff, and frankly, it's a liability issue.
I can understand that part,
And then
yeah.
we thought, okay, well, we could give it to the city, and then we'd maintain it, and then, I mean, on and on. So the liability thing kind of scared us. So if we were going to do that, we'd want to give it to you, so
Mhm.
you could have the liability.
Gotcha.
And it ended quickly.
But once again, you did say that they're in the plans for a common area for residents to be able to use and access.
Pete's been doing, advocating that for a long time. Yeah. So he keeps pitching it. We will find something.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you, Zan, so much
Yeah.
for your time.
Yeah.
Both of you, thank you.
Thanks for asking all this. You took everything away. Back to the stats. Do we have stats? I know you guys said there's some information on the need for elderly and single kids or adults. Do we have numbers on that?
For the
Just-
workforce.
Yeah,
housing,
I
that's-
mean, I'd love to see that someday or somehow versus people and how many people are commuting and families and single people coming and go and how many people are leaving Estacada to work. And I just think that's important to know and
I think they
have.
said that they sent it to the city. You guys sent that paperwork to the city, right? That report?
So we have real interesting things. We have a economic report on housing that the city has now.
Okay.
We have, and was done a year ago.
Yeah, you had specifically asked that be kept confidential. So if you would like that information released, we would need your permission to release that.
Oh, good. So it's a year old. And so we ordered a research of it. So it was now the research been done for a month. We ordered a economic impact on what this means. This project means economically. And when I say economically, I mean dollars to the city annually. And I have that number from the county economist and the Johnson Economics that we haven't shared yet. So we have all sorts of economic information.
And I guess a concern for the 5 handicap stalls. I mean, if this is going to be for seniors, is that going to be enough? It doesn't seem to add up. And also another concern is stairs and whether is there talk of like elevators or anything? It just doesn't seem like viable for seniors to me.
So we didn't develop.
Am I using the wrong?
We're not
word?
building this as
Elderly?
a senior facility.
Yeah.
It's an open market facility.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
can accommodate seniors.
Yeah.
So roughly between a third and a quarter of the units are ground floor.
Mhm.
So it would be pretty easy to accommodate ADA and things like that.
Yeah.
So we haven't actually done the plan for that.
Yeah.
But we assume it would accommodate those. Excuse me.
So
I think
so there's not going to be a designated percentage
Mm.
of the,
That's exactly what I'm saying.
okay.
Because I think that's hard to have intent, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Well,
Which
so-
is what I'm struggling with.
So I think if you review the client list of the Red Fox Motel right now, and
Workforce.
I'm not even gonna look at Sam because he'll be staring me down. There's a fairly high percentage of seniors, and I wouldn't even guess. I would guess probably a quarter. And they're not handicapped. I mean, they're
Yeah.
elderly, and I'm sure we can get some type of data from Sam on that. I mean, it'll be it won't be precise, but it'll be an indication.
Do y'all mind if I move this along to some next steps? Okay. I am going to recommend that this committee either first choice, cleanest thing to do, deny this round of design review. They are close to meeting code requirements, but there are enough missing pieces here that weren't demonstrated in their submittal. Even the things that we resolved, that they haven't met the code with what they submitted. Doesn't really change anything either for them either way, whether we deny it or approve with conditions. It's just that approving this with conditions is just more complicated, more stuff for for us, we city people to track, is tracking those specific conditions. So either, approving with conditions sounds nicer, but the reality for them is the same. They need to come back to us with revised plans and a revised submittal that is that really clearly, explicitly addresses each of these code criteria. For the applicant team, the online code contains everything that we reviewed here today for this design review. Chapter 16.26.040 and 050, I believe. And you also have a copy of the staff memo, which walked through the things that we walked through today. So the revised plans, would just need to be revised. You can, if there weren't changes to the actual layout of the site, which maybe there might need to be, and we can discuss more specifically how to interpret some of those seemingly conflicting code sections. But, you could basically take this existing site plan and, right on top of it, demonstrating where the common area is going to be or where, whatever, however you want to do it. We just really need to have each of these code sections clearly and directly addressed in the application submittal in order for us to be able to more easily conduct this design review and say, yep, that one's met, check that off. That one's met, check that off, right? The easier that you guys make it for us to do that review by very clearly pointing to how each code criteria is met, the smoother the approval process goes for the applicants, and it's better for everyone.
Clearly, we would be the opposite. I would want an approval with conditions that we meet things. And the reason why is that ticking noise is billing hours. And so this is, the more we put into this, I don't want to be in the position of being disappointed later on if there's a staff change or if there's a change in the political environment. I don't think that's fair. If there's small items that we need to show you that, and frankly, I think we're pretty close on most of this stuff. I would prefer respectfully to have an approval and have it conditioned on meeting requirements.
It really doesn't make any difference.
Correct. I think this is a big deal. So
I'm gonna go ahead and speak up and I'm just approval, I'm not okay with the approval with conditions.
mhm.
And I totally understand what you're understanding. Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying, but I just think it needs to be very black and white and very clear and on paper. And yeah.
Either, just to be clear, either way, whether our paper today says approved with conditions that they meet the development code requirements that have been shown to be unmet, or denied based on not meeting these development code requirements. Either way, you guys have to regroup and come back with revised documents showing that you've met these unmet development code sections. So it really is the same amount of regrouping and work on applicants' end. It
So
just
will we
sounds
specifically
different.
get, if it's denied, will we specifically get the elements in which we denied for?
Yep. So after this meeting, I'm gonna document, we're gonna go back through, we'll take minutes for the meeting and we're gonna document in a design review determination letter for you all, which sections of the code were found to be unmet. It'll look pretty similar to the staff report. And so then your job will be to revise the plans in order to meet those things that were found to be unmet, resubmit them. We'll schedule another design review meeting upon resubmittal, hopefully with the same folks on the panel. And at that time, if all of those code requirements are then shown to be met, then we can approve the design.
Is there a way in the future that when people want to do something like this again, we can give them this first so that they can check it off themselves and they can know we need this, and then bring it to us and then we can agree?
Yeah, they receive the design review application packet,
Okay.
which directs them to the code criteria. And like I said, the only thing conflicting there is the transparent elements section in the online code was not updated in the packet, but looking at their submitted narrative, it looks like they were referring to the online code anyway. So they had all of that.
Okay.
It's all in the code.
Killer.
Moving forward with a couple of the people stepping or not being able to make it or stepping down from this review committee, can we make Lonzo an official voting member of this committee? I know I don't qualify, so I want to ask that, but Lonzo does qualify. So.
Yep. The code empowers, and there's nothing in the code that says that a second round of design review for the same project needs to be done by a committee again at all. Technically, I could conduct the design review myself and not convene a committee at all. But as I said, it's a complicated project. It really helps to have extra eyes on things. So no, we don't have to convene the same exact membership for the committee. We could have a larger committee. We could have different people. But you all do meet the criteria for this committee, which is being a downtown business owner or property owner, merchant, or design professional. So what the code says this committee should be comprised of. So
I don't know if I'm jumping the gun or anything, but are we going to get any public input or anything like that?
I'm going to recommend that you all take your vote. If you're willing to make a motion to, I'd recommend denying or approving with the condition that they resubmit plans and that demonstrate meeting all of the unmet development code requirements. If we can go ahead and just do that vote, and then I know that there are people that have been waiting to say their piece about this. We're not required to hear any public comment on this type of application, but I think it is nice for folks to voice their concerns if they have them and they came all the way out to City Hall. So I would like to give them that opportunity to put it on the record, but I'd appreciate if we just go with the vote first.
It's just you two.
Can I make a comment or question? that, just for the record, this meeting, I'm here because I, committed being here. And the intention of this meeting, correct me if I'm wrong, Taylor, is to basically check the guidelines that this project is checks it all versus us being here, and voting on what we believe, our constituents want based on whether we think this design fits our city or not.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
This is
I just-
it's
tough.
one more
This
of
is
those
hard.
things where a city board is forced to vote yes on something, not because they like it
Yeah.
or necessarily think it's good for the community, or that it's what the constituents want. But they are reviewing the code and looking at the project and they're
Yeah.
saying, does it meet the code or not? That's what the vote is.
Mhm.
So just to be clear for all the people listening, when
Yeah.
you see these votes on developments, it doesn't mean that the city council or this, whatever board it is, support or promoting that type of development. They are just doing their job of
Mhm.
applying the city code.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so it's me and you, Julie.
I guess so.
Okay. I make a motion to how to deny the application.
We
With
need a second.
pending conditions that are met.
You just deny, you don't need to do conditions
denied,
for a
okay.
denial.
Okay,
Yeah.
where they're gonna come back and. Yeah, all right.
The second time.
Seconded.
Mm-hmm.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Okay, we will take public, so before we move on to public comments, so I will document these findings for everyone's edification in a design review determination letter that will establish which criteria need to be met in revised documents for a new design review submittal. There shouldn't be any surprises in that. It's everything that we talked about today. That will go out certainly by the end of this week, hopefully by Wednesday. And folks can email planning@cityofestacada.org with any questions about that, or call us at 503-630-8286. And I think we can hear public comment at this time at that microphone. And we had a couple of speaker request forms, so we'll go with the first one on top.
First one is,
And public comment is limited to 3 minutes. will time you, just
Yeah,
an
we'll
FYI.
time it.
first one is Shane Harris.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity. You pretty much answered all the questions I had and concerns. So thank you for that, for clarifying what this actually is. Because like you said, on the internet, it's a lot of comments. I do actually have some safety comments and some other ones. My local issues would be parking, for overflow parking, and you said workforce for large size vehicles. I know some of these workers have big trucks. And so what would the street parking down there accommodate? And is that even legal inside the city to park on those streets for limited access? I know my street has a lot of workers with large vans and we get down to single lane, so you can't have double cars going through. That would be a safety concern. And is that going to be addressed for possible overflow parking and workforce large vehicles? Another one would be, I know there's a waterfront restoration thing. How's that going to impact that plan? There was something brought up in the last city council about rezoning by the community center to put in a computer repair shop. Is that going to impact zoning in that area? Then since you brought up the seniors, I was going to bring up ADA accessibility. I'm disabled. My wife's disabled. 3 flights of stairs can be hard at times. I just had ankle reconstruction. My wife has other issues. So when you brought in the seniors, that made me question your ground floors. And is there going to be any ability for this to get people on higher levels that do have disabilities. Yeah. And the other one is the legal issues of notifying people at the Fox and your annex for displacement. Has that criteria been met? Or either evictions, displacement, and relocation, legal issues that this can bring up that I did not see addressed for moving those individuals out, and where would they be housed during this project? That's the answer to everything else. So thank you very much for your time.
Good question.
Can I speak to the street parking?
Yeah, the street parking.
So down on Larch Road, right now, currently, there are semi trucks parked along the road, and with plenty of access for two lanes, even with the semi trucks, the log trucks being parked down there. So there is access for street parking. Again, I don't like the amount of compact parking that there is in this parking
Yeah, I
lot,
saw that too.
but just knowing that on Larch Road, there is currently already semi trucks being parked down there.
Yeah, I don't
and
get down to that area that much.
Yeah.
But I went down there, I think it was yesterday or the day before when I heard about this, just to see what that area had. And I know that the pre-meeting for that was on January 5th. If anybody wants to know when this first came up for the whatever you call it, your first meeting was on January 5th. But yeah, it just little concerns in that area for accessibility, kids being in there with that much traffic. I know all apartment buildings people own. My street, I have a couple that owns 4 vehicles. So their driveway, and then they take up both sides of their street. People collect cars. It would be a public safety concern on vehicles and how that would be addressed. And with the ADA and the other things, it just goes in with your regulations on how that, but thank you.
Thank you.
Next comment form.
Wally Kanza. Okay. Jim Moriarty.
You guys have already answered one. Appreciate it. I just wanted to bring some questions that people weren't here. Obviously, it's no longer good morning, it's good afternoon. But I just wanted to bring some questions to the committee and staff. And here we go. They had a question if this is a project for a disabled elderly community, and why aren't there any elevators? So I appreciate you asking about that, Julie. And let's see. All right. How does this project affect the overall riverfront beautification project, which was back in June of 2018, where a boathouse, restaurant, amphitheater, covered outdoor area, floating dock in regards to that, I believe is no longer on the table, but it was just a question. One that I had, was there a traffic impact study done? If you're going to have probably 1.5 parking spaces for all the units, that's 100 cars automatically here in Estacada. And the intersection over here is brand new. And the way everything comes, you're going to go down Acacia to Larch and everything comes up to Broadway. Has there been a study done on that? Just curious if that was done in the paperwork. We'd definitely like to see that. Let's see. And in regards to the Red Fox being refurbished, in the amount of the people still in the Red Fox, is that required on the application, or is that something that's not within the 8 buildings? For density, I guess the question is, when you have say the municipal code 16.24.040 subsection B, maximum residential density for multifamily dwelling units is 30 per acre. Is the old building or the one that's being refurbished in that, or within the 100? Just a question.
That code section is for the R3 multifamily zone. And so this property is in the downtown zone, which doesn't have any maximum density requirement.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you. Appreciate it for being here. Thank you.
Then we have Kimberly Binder Nastrom. Good, okay. And then Jonathan online. Should be able to unmute.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, this is Jonathan Metcalf, one of the city council members, actually one of the councilmen, the newest one. First of all, Taylor, thank you for your hard work on this and getting this and being transparent enough to bring this to the public's attention and hold this in public versus private. I greatly appreciate that myself, and I'm sure the other people sitting in that room do as well. I'd like to commend the committee for denying that, because I think that that is a good choice in the sense of that. I feel like in sitting there for 2.5 hours listening to this far, there was a lot of reaching to try to make the codes met or find a loophole that, well, technically this could be. So I think good job on the committee to say deny this at the moment. Also, Taylor, I'd like to just say that I think that although we can have this in private and stuff like that, I think that it's very appreciated by the members of the community that we don't. There's a lot of concerns with like that traffic and then what comes with that. So what would the backup plan be? Let's just say that they don't fill 100 units with elderly people. What's the backup plan then? Do you go to government assistance, which would be like Section 8 housing type stuff to fill that, which then generates drugs and, statistically speaking, drugs and crime into our community? I would say that there's a lot of areas of concern, and I think that this needs to be a lot more put together before it's brought to a vote. I think this was a little bit ahead personally. I just wanted to comment and support of the mayor on this particular issue. But I would like to thank the developer for coming and for coming in and stating their facts and answering the questions. However, I think if we're talking about good faith, like, please come to a city council meeting and address the public or be open. Let's make it an agenda item and let the public ask them directly questions. I mean, it's all fine and dandy to bring 4 or 5 people and talk to them and try to spit numbers and stuff like that. But if this is really for what this community needs and wants, then can we address this in a manner that is actually addressing the community and not just 3 or 4 people, and asking the community where this derives from. And I'll digress right there, but I just want to thank everybody for their hard work. And I appreciate you letting me sit in on this via conference. I'm sorry I couldn't be there.
Thanks, Counselor.
Thank you.
That all for public comment. Anyone else in the room or on Zoom can raise your hand if you would like to speak.
Okay, looks like we have Sharon Darcy.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to, I've been listening to this meeting from the beginning, and I just wanted to say I'm a community member here in Estacada, and I've been here for over 20 years. For 2 years of that time, I participated on the Park and Recs Commission. And back in 2017, there was a lot of people that came together to make the Parks Master Plan. And there was a lot of time and effort put into that. So I appreciate everybody taking the time today to do the same thing. But the statement I wanted to make is that when the city decides to cancel out other plans, are they obligated in any way to the public to inform them that, say, the Parks Master Plan for the riverfront property has changed? I do believe that a lot of people were surprised to hear this, that apartments were going into that area, and just wanted to comment that there shouldn't be so many surprises. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. I'm not, regretfully, I'm not super familiar with the parks master plan, but I will say that the city just recently completed the 100% design and engineering for the Lakeshore Trail project, which might be what you're talking about. And it's not on this property that we were looking at today, but it is directly south of it, adjacent to the property. The city is, pending funding, still planning on moving forward with constructing out that trail and gangway out into the river. So we are anticipating that project to still move forward and would, like we said, want to see a public path get connected to access that trail from this project. Any other comments? There's someone in the waiting room. Oh, she's trying to join.
Casey?
Yeah.
Well, good afternoon. My name's Casey Owens. I'm a retired police officer, so I kind of have an emphasis on safety and security. That's kind of my wheelhouse. I did over 30 years in law enforcement and patrol for the majority of that. I do know that apartment complexes tend to generate criminal activity a little more than your residential houses on city streets. The vast majority of my calls were taken in apartment complexes because you have so many people crammed on top of each other, thin walls, music's loud, parties, all kinds of stuff. Also, in the parking lots, you can't really tell who's supposed to be there and who's not. So there's all kinds of drug activity, prostitution, things like that. I'm not saying that's what's going to go on, but I'm just telling you my experience in this matter. I don't see any way that they're going to be able to regulate the vehicles that are in there unless they're planning. They didn't mention that. Are they going to have parking passes where we know who's supposed to be there, who's not? We're already having issues with abandoned vehicles that are being left here on the highway, other places. The call load for the sheriff's department is going to increase. I mean, it just is. You're adding 100 people to a 3-acre spot. It's going to happen. I don't know, I know that we're already short-staffed in this city as far as police protection. We've had the Lieutenant Mendoza explained to us that we don't even have 24-hour coverage in our city. We have a small town. You're adding 100 people, or at least 100 people. It's going to be a little more than that, I'm sure, into the small community, and that's significant. It's just getting to the point to where you're almost going to have to seriously look into doing a police department for this small town if you want adequate coverage. I know Clackamas County does a fantastic job, but they've admitted that their response time could be 10 minutes during certain times of the day. And again, we don't have a deputy assigned to Estacada 24 hours a day. So I have concerns with that. That's just something that I think needs to be looked at. I don't think the apartment complex is going to be willing to hire a security guard that's on site around the clock, which would help. But again, with the parking, the transients, you've got the riverfront down there with the homeless that are already coming and going. I just see this as a big problem for that location to add, like I said, that many people. But I'm sure my 3 minutes is up. That's all I had.
Yep. Any other comments? Hands raised. There's one.
My name is Micah Cook and I'm a community member. I did not have very much notice of this meeting. I appreciate some of the comments made and questions brought up. One of those comments was the fact that we're all a team here and we would like to try to work together to get to the end result. and then off the coattails of a couple of the last calls off of comments made offline, from online, they had mentioned some concerns towards secrecy, not secrecy, but public notice. And as I think it was you, this wasn't necessarily had to have been made public. So I appreciate that here and now and the opportunity that we're getting. Sorry, I'm not really getting in front of people. So, the other aspect that was brought up was the traffic. Was that at all studied in the local area? I was like to expound that to the traffic leading into the supposed workforce leading out of and back into, adding to the traffic that may be impacted that way. I think it was one of the gentlemen that just spoke, the council member. I would appreciate if we could open this up and possibly make it a town hall agenda point. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Any other hands, comments, hand raises? Seeing none. Thank you all. You're real troopers. This was a long one. So next steps, the applicants we expect they will submit an updated revised design review application, more clearly addressing how each of those development code requirements are met. And at the time we receive that application, we'll go ahead and publish it on the meeting page instead of waiting until the week before the meeting. That'll give everyone a lot more time to review the materials. And yes, I will just let you all know that we'll have a committee review it again. It won't be a staff review, so it will be publicly posted, and all three of you will be invited to volunteer for that committee if you're available and want to. And if there are any members of the community that meet the criteria for joining the design review committee, it would probably be nice to not have it be just, no offense, but entirely DEC members. It's always good to have fresh eyes on things and get people involved who aren't already on a city committee. So we could kind of extend the public participation for the next one. Ideally, I just need to know who meets those criteria. I don't know everyone in this community. So if you folks know downtown, the criteria is a downtown property owner or business owner or merchant or a design professional. So anyone who meets those criteria could be appointed to the next design review committee. So get a hold of us, planning@cityofestacada.org. And this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.